And the reason we have morals as a society, right? It is because you and I exist, right? If I was the only person on the planet, most moral things wouldn't exist, right? We have most. I mean, there are some things like moral, like should I be a vegan? Even if nobody other human existed, is it moral for me to kill an animal for food? It's still a question I have to think about, right? Because they might be some kind of sapient primate, or it's still a question that we have to deal with about morality. But for the most part, most of our morals come from the fact that we are dealing in a society. So, for example, the do not lie, right? Because that's a really simple one. Do not lie. The commandment is, thou shalt not bear false witness. But what happens if that's conflicting with something like honor thy mother and father? Well, you need to lie in order to honor them. Or there are some situations where I think lying is morally permissible, right? I mean, would you agree? And by the way, I do agree with you. I think we can epistemically find these moral facts on our own.
Right. I believe that there are instances, and I'll quote my beloved friend and mentor who's gone, Dr. Geisler. He had what was called a graded absolutism. So when you have some moral principles that come in conflict, you exempt the lesser in order to obey the greater. So it's the issue of lying in order to save a life if you're in Nazi Germany. But I think you're forgetting an important point on what you're called consequentialism or utilitarianism, is that sometimes following the mandates of the conscience and that which is good is not so utilitarian or consequential for the individual. And I'll give you an example. My wife lost a very good job by choosing to do right. So the consequences were not very good for us as a family. We went through a tremendous amount of struggle by her choosing to do right. And of course, you look at it, you go, oh, it would have been a better situation. Nobody would have gotten hurt. But we actually got hurt by doing what was right. So I think there's a greater instance of our knowledge of good and evil. We have the proximate cause, which is our own nature, rationality, but there's also this distal cause, which I would say is God, that grounds morality ontologically. We need to make a distinction between that which is epistemologically known and that which is ontologically grounded. So in that sense, it does take God to be, in order to ground morality ontologically, because you really can't have a ought in the sense of that which is demanding of us and our conscience. So that it really is, there is something within, but there's also, well, this is where you find yourself. You find yourself an effect without a cause. Where does this moral law come from?
Well, that it appeals to duty, right?
Well, ultimately, ontologically is what.
Yeah, well, that appeals to a deontological, actually, right? So your gradient thing, the thing you were talking about, some kind of gradient, that to me is pretty close to act consequentialism, right? So with an act consequentialism, what determines whether something is morally good or not is if the net overall good outweighs the net to harm.
How would you answer my situation?
Well, I don't appeal to consequentialism. So, I mean, in your particular case, I would appeal more to virtue ethics, right? Without knowing exactly what she did.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Basically, not lying,
that.
not choosing not to lie.
Well, in virtue, like I said, in virtue,
you don't know, lawyers lie a lot.
Right. I mean, yeah, lying in itself is not an morally impermissible act. I mean, unless you're Kantian. But there are times where you're probably morally obligated to lie. If I don't want to cause a harm to somebody, right? If
I've lied for the sake of the greater good. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I really don't. Now, I can't get away.
Nice?
If I say anything that's even partly not true, I have 1,000 people that are going to tweet a million things, right? So I can't get away with that. But for the most people, lying in certain circumstances. I mean, parents lie to their kids all the time, right? Parents, mommy, daddy, are you fighting? No, we're just
right.
No, go to your room. I mean, there are times to lie, right? So I don't think the act itself or the consequences of the action is necessarily what constitutes what is morally good or not. But right. I do agree with you wholeheartedly that there's a distinct difference between our epistemological approach of how we know a moral fact to exist, as opposed to the ontological of what is an ought, what we ought to do given a very specific situation.